3, 2, 1. Hi everybody, and welcome to another exciting edition of Boring JavaScript. I'm your host, the Virtuoid, aka Mike Smith, and today we're going to be talking about the switch case. Now, what exactly is the switch case within JavaScript? Well, if you've got a big, huge, long list of if, else if, else if, else if, else if, else if, else, the switch case statements are another way to be able to express that. That makes the big, huge, long string look a lot better, look cleaner, and for some people, easier to maintain. Now, let's take a look and see what it does. So now we're going to take a look at that switch case statement and how it's constructed. In my particular case for this example, I'm going to use the for each loop method to be able to go through my array and return each object and look at a particular property in the object. In this case, I'm going to be taking a look at the size property of each object. So here's the switch case itself. The switch case is actually split into 4 different sections. The first section is the switch statement itself, and the switch statement tests a certain variable. In this case, I'm testing the size property of each object. Within the block of the switch statement is contained all of the different cases, and that's the second part of our switch case. The case is your conditional, that's your test. So for instance, I've highlighted case tiny here. That's like saying if animal.size equals tiny, or if animal.size equals small, and so on and so forth. So each of the conditions that you wish to test for gets its own case. If the condition is not met, it just continues on. But if the condition is met, then it will start executing at the underneath the case statement itself. And that brings us to the third part of the switch case statement, and that's the break. The break says stop execution at that point and then go back outside the block and continue execution from that point on. So in my case, if the animal comes up to be tiny, it will set my text to be super tiny, and then it will break and stop and continue on to the next statement, which in this case is the console.log. Now what happens if you don't have the break statement? Well, we'll show you that here a little bit later on. So now let's take a look at the code and see how it runs. So we go into node, and we go node case. And sure enough, there it is. All we've done here is that we've tested the text property, the size property of each object and assigned a text to our variable called text to give you more description of the type of the animal. Now earlier I mentioned that there were 4 parts to the switch case statement, so now I'm going to show you the 4th part, and that's the default case. Let's take a look at it within the switch statement itself. Default is located right down here, and its main purpose is to execute code when all of the other case conditions do not match. So for instance, if I had a type of one of my animals that was not tiny or small or medium or big or huge, then the default will execute. So to make this example work here, I have changed my type for whale from size of huge to size of giant. So I would expect whale to print out, whoops, I didn't recognize its size. Again, why? Because there is no case giant within there. Let's see how that works. Let's go over to node, let's type in default, and sure enough, that's what happened. The whale is, whoops, I didn't recognize its size. Again, why did it print that out? Because the whale's size was giant, and there was no case equals giant, and so when all of the cases the conditions don't match, the default will always get executed. Now earlier I said if you take out the break statement, then some strange things are going to happen. I'm going to show you now exactly what will happen here. So here is my switch case statement again from the earlier example, but I have now removed the break statement from tiny. Now Larry, my lizard, is the only tiny animal I have here, so I expect Larry to say super tiny for the text. Let's just see what happens without the break statement. Node multi-case. Uh-oh, the lizard is smaller than average. Why didn't it say the lizard is super tiny? Well, that's because we had removed the break statement, and let me show you exactly why that happened here. Whenever you remove a break statement, remember the break statement says stop execution of the code and then go to outside of your switch block and continue from that point on. Because I don't have a break, JavaScript's just going to say, oh, okay, I'm just going to keep on going. So it will always ignore the case statements. So it first executed text equals super tiny. It then executed text equals smaller than average. Then it hit the break statement and it got back out of the switch. So that's the problems that you could have if you forget to have a break statement, is that you can then execute text or execute commands that you did not believe that you needed to execute. Now, can you use that to your advantage? Actually, you can. If I had, let's say, tiny, small, and medium to print average, all I had to do was take out the break statements from tiny and small, and average would always be printed out for those three. So if you needed to group together conditions, basically saying if this and this and this, and, or I'm sorry, if this or this or this or this or this, print this out. That's how you would do that within a switch statement. Just take out the break and you can group a whole bunch of them together. And that's all there is for switch case. I hope you've enjoyed our little video here. I hope I really didn't bore you to death. And thanks again for watching Boring JavaScript. We'll see you later.